Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Steph. So in a video from a few months ago, you met my partner, Jared. That's Jared. And Jared is an avid reader like myself. And while we agree on most books, there are many other books that we don't agree on, and he is also very much a literary fiction type of gal. He loves literary fiction, and as you know if you watch my channel regularly, I dabble in literary fiction, but it is not my go-to genre. So I had this brain blast that why not read his recommendations. There are a handful, probably more than a handful. There are many books that Jared reads and immediately turns to me and says, I think that you would love this, or I really want you to read this. So I wanted to try to read some of his recommendations. I picked 5 that I felt like I had the best chance of loving. 2 of them I feel like are a little outside of my comfort zone. I wouldn't have necessarily picked them up had he not told me to. And then the other 3 I definitely wanted to pick up at some point. So I wanted to have like a combination of things in here, and I think this also really encompasses his reading taste very well, and that's something I also wanted to do because Jared is very much a multifaceted reader like many of us. Literary fiction seems to be what he gravitates toward the most. He has the most interest in it, and I think he reads it more often than anything else. He's also a really big horror lover, and then I would say lastly, he loves fantasy and sci-fi. If I had to guess, I don't know, he would probably say that I was wrong, but that was my scientific approach to this video. We're trying to take books from his top 3 genres that I've noticed as a bystander. Let's get into the TBR. The first one is The Last House on Needless Street. He loves Catriona Ward, and I do think in theory he would have recommended me Sundial, but I had already read that before I came up with this video idea, so I'm going with The Last House on Needless Street. I know that he really3 this one. This seems to be more of what I like in horror / thriller, so I'm gonna try this one out. So then moving into literary fiction, I have 3 books. I mean, I think 2 of these books border on being something else. So the one that I know is actually just straight up literary fiction and was also Jared's favorite book of last year is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And I'm a little bit nervous about this one because not only is it Jared's favorite book, but it was so many people's favorite book of last year, and I'm just nervous that I'm hyping myself up a little too much for this book. So we have Migrations, which I chose because this is one of his new favorite authors as well. He called this climate fiction but said it was a little more unexpected, so I don't know if it has like a sci-fi twist to it or not, but I know that this is one of his new favorite authors. He has read both of her works and gave them 5 stars, loved them, and has recommended both of them to me, and I just wanted to try out her debut adult novel. And then this next one, I'm like pretty sure it's kind of sci-fi-y, and that's Sea of Tranquility. I do know that this author also wrote Station 11 and The Glass Hotel, and I'm pretty sure both of those have like very light sci-fi in them, so I'm assuming this one does as well because I have heard that Station 11 and The Glass Hotel have like little Easter eggs in here. I know that this was also one of his favorite books of last year. He actually read it twice. So the fact that he read it twice, like I've got to try it out. And the one that I'm probably admittedly most excited for is The Rage of Dragons. This was a fantasy series that he picked up on a whim. I had said that I was interested in it, and he likes dragon books as well, so he picked this one up and gave it 5 stars, immediately went into the second one. I think he also gave that one 5 stars. This is not a completed series, so I am not excited about that, but I am very excited to pick up this book because dragons, but also this is another book that so many people loved back in like 2020. I feel I saw it on so many people's favorite books of the year, and I'm excited to dive into what is hopefully a very epic fantasy world. And I can say that Jared and I really align in our reading taste with fantasy. We tend to give fantasies the same star ratings and have the same feelings about fantasy. So I think that this could be probably my favorite book of the vlog. I'm guessing that this will be my top book of the vlog. And then I will hope that either Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow or The Last House on Needless Street will be like my second best, if not tied for second best of this vlog. The other 2, I don't really know. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about them, and I'm just hoping for the best. Hello. We are moving into the last house on Needless Street, which I'm so excited. Although I didn't fully love Sundial, like I gave it a 3.5 stars, this just seems to have a completely different vibe than what Sundial was doing. And this is more my vibe in terms of horror because it seems like it's maybe haunted house-y. There's going to be a lot of twists and turns. And I was telling Sid in the sprints that I was going to start this whenever I finished my other book, and she was really excited and she was like, don't read ahead and hopefully you don't know anything about the ending because the twists and turns are going to get you. So I will try to film as much as possible my reactions to things, and hopefully it's a 5-star because this is a 5-star prediction. Actually, a lot of these books in here are 5-star predictions just because Jared and I do have quite similar taste, and he's usually really good at telling me recommendations that end up being really highly rated. Hi, I am like 40% into the last house on Needless Street. Oh my God, it's uncomfortable. I am unsettled. I'm uncomfortable. And I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the fuck's happening in this book, but it's unsettling. It's so unsettling. I don't know where it's going. I don't even know if I have a full grasp on what has happened. I just know that we have this man who by all means could be a killer. I don't know. And he has a daughter who she's going through some stuff. And then there's a cat who prays to Jesus, loves God. And they all 3 live together and coexist together in really weird ways. I'm not going to be able to talk too much about this book because I think it's one of those books that you like don't need to know or shouldn't know that much going into it, and like you just want all of the wild and weird shit that happens in here to just naturally happen to you without knowing about it first. So I won't give too many details or anything like that, but I don't know how I feel about it. In my gut, I don't even have a rating for it at this point in time. I don't even know if I'm enjoying my time. I just know that it's making me feel extremely uncomfortable, which is the point, right? So it's doing what it's supposed to do. I finished The House on Needless Street and I decided to bring Jared in on it. He has a signed copy. We met Catcher on Award. Okay, I wanted to bring Jared on to do a couple things. I wanted to know why you recommended this one specifically to me. You recommended it to me before I even read Sundial.
I took what you didn't like. Hi, speaking of the cat. I think I took what I felt like you didn't like about Sundial, and I figured that this would have been a better fit when it came to horror. It made me a lot more uneasy than Sundial did. I think Sundial's a better book, but I just thought that this was a weirder story. I figure like this is the book that would get you into her, I think. Mm-hmm. You like to guess what's gonna happen in books, and I don't
like to guess what's gonna happen in books. My brain automatically just figures things out. For The House on Needless Street, I didn't give this one a 5-star. I gave it a 4-star, but that's still a fairly high rating for me. I think the thing about this book that really worked well for me is how uncomfortable I felt the whole time.
I think that the genre of horror is 4 stars.
This particular genre of horror?
No, horror. It's hard for me to give something a 5-star. That's why I give her 5-star, because I feel like she writes like what you would call a normal fiction writer with teetering purple prose, but just like very well written, well researched.
Well, I'm curious if you think that's because similarly to like romance, horror has a lot of subgenres. Like there's a lot of small things that can turn you off of a horror book. Like if you hate one particular thing about a horror book, it can lower your rating, and that's similar what I've found with exploring romance. If there are certain tropes that you don't like that are in a book but you like the characters and maybe you like the romance itself, or you like the most of the horror in a horror book but there's like that one thing. So for me, for example, with haunted houses, I love a haunted house story, but I only ever give haunted house stories 5 stars. Yes, The Good House is like my favorite haunted house story of all time, because Tananarive do actually like goes there. Whereas I feel like there are so many haunted house stories that they explain away the possibility of paranormal things.
Explain away.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Like if you don't like horror, then horror is a hard genre to get into.
I feel like endings are always very hit or miss for me. I've never, besides The Good House and like The Only Good Indians and Ring Shout and Sorrowland, which are my like 5-star horrors, endings really make or break the book for me. Do you feel that same way?
Stephen King can't land an ending. He's really bad at endings.
Okay. Yeah.
So like, I like Stephen King, but he doesn't have a lot of 5 stars for me because he can't land the book. The Shining's a 5-star book.
Okay, anyway, back on track.
We're not talking about all of his books, and I'm not gonna rate them.
So, like I said, the reason that this got a 4 stars for me was that I really did enjoy the fact that it did make me feel so uncomfortable the entire time.
Yeah.
And I think that the ending is pretty good. It did get a little drawn out for me, which is, again,
really?
Yeah, why I gave it 4 stars. I felt like I liked those reveals. Like, my mind was blown at a lot of the reveals in here, and I liked how it came together, but the end just kind of kept going for me, and I was like, all right.
Because it's a Mariashka doll. That's her books are all Russian dolls.
Oh, is that why they kept referencing that in the story?
I don't remember that. But no, that's what it is. It's like you're following a certain line, you think. What you think is true keeps unraveling over and over again.
Yeah.
So you start questioning things, and that's why it's hard to guess what's happening, because you don't know what to trust, who to trust, what is actually happening.
No, I think the ending answered, for the most part, my questions. I think I only had like one major question at the end that you couldn't even answer for me, so I don't know if it's a question that's meant to be answered. I think you're just supposed to like assert your own ideas from what she's given you. The book is supposed to, I believe, make you feel really confused the whole time, and I did feel very confused, but like I said, for the most part, like the feeling of being uncomfortable and uneasy and questioning your own reality when you're reading this book was very prevalent for me.
Yeah, I like that. I just randomly thought about like, should I just start playing the harmonica on camera?
Maybe another time.
But like most of the time when you're like, you were saying something and I was supposed to be paying attention, I was thinking of playing a harmonica. Anyways, carry on. Keep going.
You didn't actually answer my question. Did you give this 4 or 5 stars?
5.
5 stars.
I gave all of hers 5 stars. I think these books are good books for people who don't like certain horror and they want to read something that kind of like they want to obsessively read that's written well.
Is that what you would classify it? Like a
Instead, I said brain horror. I meant psychological horror. Make me sound smart in the editorial. Thanks.
The editorial. I don't know, my mind was blown every time you were revealed something. And sometimes when things, I guess, have that Russian nest doll thing where it keeps unraveling, that doesn't always work well for me. I can think of like Ninth House, for example, where that didn't work well for me, but I know you really liked it, and obviously other people really love Ninth House, but it didn't work that well for me. But in here, I felt like everything that you learned was necessary and gave you what you needed.
I don't know how to talk about things. I'm really bad at remembering details of books, which works for these vlogs, luckily.
Yeah.
I can't spoil you because I read books and then it's as if I never read them sometimes. I just wanted you to read it because I'm like, if I'm going to get creeped out, you're going to get creeped out too.
But what are you reading, Jard?
I am reading Scorched Grace by an author that I can't remember her name. So yeah, strangely, it's got a 3.3 on Goodreads, but it's one of those times where I'm just like, I think it's great. It's written by a poet, but it's not too purpley.
But she didn't even know it.
This is, yep. Some parting thoughts.
No, we don't need parting thoughts. Anyway.
It's a balmy 71 degrees.
I appreciate
if you're telling me that they do not want a cowboy weather update every time I'm on camera, you're out of your mind.
So I want to say earlier this week, it is Friday now. I think on Monday, if not Sunday, I started tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. This is really fun because I'm not only reading it for the Jared vlog that you're watching, but I'm also reading it for Noelle's book club. So I'll link Noelle's channel and that live down below because I'm like 100% sure, we'll go with a generous 99.9% sure that I'm gonna finish this and that live show is gonna happen before I ever get this vlog out. So I'll have it all linked down below. But I started this on like Sunday or Monday and it is now Friday. It is cleaning day. I just finished cleaning. So I'm now 202 pages in, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm probably only this far because of today and listening to it while I'm cleaning. That is really the only reason I've been getting through this. I'm not gonna say I'm not enjoying it, but the beginning was such a slow start for me, and there are quite a few characters in here that I don't really like. I feel like at this point I really only have an attachment to Sadie, even though I do like Sam. I just don't have the same type of attachment to him as I do Sadie, and it's also hard to say that I have that great of attachment to Sadie, and this is very character driven. So it's about two characters who have decided to make a video game together, and they have had a on again, off again best friendship since they were younger, and they are coming back together in college to build this video game, and this video game seems as if it's going to change the trajectory of both of their lives and potentially their friendship. And I will say, like, the beginning of this book, I was interested. I like the writing style here, but the more we've gotten into it, the less interest I have. I don't know if it's because I'm reading the audiobook or if it's just the way that this is paced. I can't really put my finger on it. I don't know. I'm really struggling, and I'm nervous that this isn't going to turn around for me and that I'm not going to love it as much as I think I'm going to. And genuinely, as you know from the beginning, I ranked what I thought would be my top book, and this and Rage of Dragons were at the top. Okay, I have to say I spoke too soon. I loved this. So I mean, this obviously can't be 5 stars because it did really take me a good chunk of this book to feel invested, to feel anything towards these characters. I was teetering on like, maybe I should give this 5 stars because the ending and my emotional investment in the book blew me away and surprised me so much. It went from me not caring about certain characters very much, like I didn't hate them, didn't like them, or in some cases I didn't really enjoy their character development, I didn't really care about them at all, to suddenly being super invested in them as characters to the point that I was crying. So part of me feels like I should have given this 5 stars, but I think I'm gonna settle on a 4 only because it just didn't feel like that 5 star at the time. Like I said, I'll have Noelle's book club live down below, and you should definitely check it out if you've read this and you want our thoughts and opinions. Like, we go pretty deep into the book. I think we talked for a pretty long time, and I don't know what more to say other than this book is probably my biggest surprise of the year because I didn't think that I was gonna love it like everybody else did. I was already enjoying the writing for sure, and there were some characters that I had investment in, like I said, Sadie, and I did enjoy Sam, but I wasn't as invested in him as I was Sadie. But by the end, there were so many characters and situations that surprised me to the point of like tears. And I don't know, I definitely want to read more by Gabrielle Zevin, and I can completely understand why Jared would like this. And I also understand why he would recommend this to me because it touches on friendships, it touches on long-term friendships and what those ups and downs look like. It dives really deep into these characters' histories. It also showcases the change that we undergo as we age and experience certain things. Sorry, my memory card ran out of space, but what I was saying was I also loved that this book explores a platonic friendship, and we don't often see that in media. It usually turns into a romance of some sort, but this was just really beautiful. It was a very beautiful book, and it had a lot of those things and tropes that I love in literary fiction and why I continue to try literary fiction, even though, you know, a lot of times it doesn't work out for me. But the reason I continue coming back to literary fiction is for this feeling, and especially the feeling of not really knowing where a book is going to go and how it's going to emotionally impact you. I will absolutely be thinking about it time and time and time again, and that's why I would love to reread it to give it another shot to see if my opinion changes on the beginning, because as you know, the beginning of this book was very much where I struggled. But I would have to say that like there were so many great moments in here. I wasn't sure if I liked it in the moment, but there is an Oregon Trail scene, as you may know, which I talked about about it a little bit in the beginning clip, but this book is about the friendship of Sadie and Sam and their creation of video games and how those video games became popular and how it kind of changes the trajectory of their lives, but also their friendship. And so there's an Oregon Trail scene, and it was beautiful, especially how it plays into their friendship and their relationship as a whole. I really loved that scene more than I expected, because when I was first reading it, I was like, what is this? What are we doing? And then I realized what was going on, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the metaphor. I really loved this. And I think that if you like the exploration of a friendship from being young to old and the ups and downs and the messiness of it all, on top of video game creation, which is not like the forefront of this book. So if you've been hesitating to pick this up because you think it's very much about video games, it's not. One of the things that I did want to mention, which I think I talked about it pretty extensively in the live show as well, there is a pretty toxic relationship in here. I feel like it was borderline, if not very much abusive, and I feel like it goes unchecked. I think one of my arguments maybe for why it was unchecked, because that is what more closely resembles reality. But unfortunately, I was left wanting it to be more challenged in this book than it was. So that was really unfortunate for me. And that's another reason why I don't think I would change my star rating even upon a reread, because of it going unchallenged and the fact that that was one of the characters that like was really a struggle for me to read about. But yeah, I am settling on a 4 out of 5 stars. Hello, I've gathered you all here today because I'm officially back in action. I'm officially a reader again. I am out of my slump, although I think it was more of like a crash and burn out than anything else, but I'm back and I'm a reader again. We'll see how long it lasts. So I decided to come back to the Jared vlog, and I finished Sea of Tranquility, and I finished this in 2 sittings. It reads so quickly. I know these 3 books are not a series by any means, but I do think that this read would have been even more fun if I had also read The Glass Hotel, and I read Station 11 a very long time ago, so I don't remember it. So if I would have reread Station 11 as well, because there are characters from those stories in here, like prevalent characters, and this is all about like time travel and are we living in a simulation? Which when we were talking about that, I was like, wow, are we? But overall, I did enjoy this. I just don't know that I actually know what happened in the end. Like, Jared told me he read this twice because of that feeling. I'm not gonna read this twice because I would really like to read the other 2 first and then dive back into this. But my initial thoughts before ever attempting to reread this book is, first, I don't know that I know exactly what happened in the end. And secondly, while this was fun on audiobook, I think it would have been a better physical reading experience because I didn't love all of the narrators very much. But it is a full cast narration, so if you love full cast narrations, then I recommend maybe testing it out. Third, how to describe this book to you without giving away anything, which is funny to me because this flap right here has so much stuff in it, and I'm like, I don't want to tell you all of that because I think not knowing is sort of the most fun part. There are a cast of characters in here. So in the beginning, we're following Edwin. Edwin is in the 1800s, and he sees this weird phenomenon occur, and he can't tell if it's real or not. And then you follow Olive, who is on a book tour, and it may be the start of a pandemic, not our pandemic, although that is also present in this book. It's in a different timeline. I think it's like 2200 or something. We have Gasperi, and at this point in the timeline, we have colonized space, so they're living on different planets. And in Gasperi's POV, you're seeing that he is getting this opportunity of a lifetime that may affect more than just him in this story. And there is Morella. She is sort of just like kind of a flash in the pan type of character where she's there for, I think, a purpose, but isn't serving the plot the same as these other characters are. And hers is interesting because she is looking for somebody who has been missing. And all of these characters are interconnected in some way that you don't fully understand until the end. And I think the way that it came together was very, very interesting. And I enjoyed the way it started to come together, and the threads started to make this picture that I was like, oh, wow, okay. This so very much reminded me of a few things that I've read. One being Cloud Atlas. So that's a very loose comparison, but I do feel like if you enjoyed the themes of Cloud Atlas and you enjoyed the interconnectedness of it all, you may really like this. But this also interestingly reminded me of How High We Go in the Dark. And I think that's because this is told sort of in vignettes a bit, not fully like How High We Go in the Dark, but it does feel very vignette spaghetti, where we are going through very short periods of time in very short chapters, and it's going through different timelines and following different characters, but it's somehow all interconnected. So it very much gave me How High We Go in the Dark vibes, but ultimately this is like uniquely its own book. And I just recommend maybe reading the other two books, Station 11 and The Glass Hotel, because I do genuinely think that this would be so much more fun if you had those Easter eggs. And I think they're more than Easter eggs. When I was talking to Jared about who some of these characters were, I was like, wait, that's more than an Easter egg. That's like a crossover. And as you know, the theme of this video is books that Jared has recommended to me that he thinks that I will like. And I completely understand actually why he would recommend this to me, because I do tend to like these interconnected stories that span either generations or long time periods. But also this had enough sci-fi to say like, yes, this is a sci-fi novel, but also not enough sci-fi to say that this is like a space opera or something that you really would classify as hard sci-fi. It just has like a touch, you know? But also the interconnectedness of characters and the discussion of humanity, and when you're faced with certain obstacles or situations, like what would you do? What would you do? What decisions would you make? And would you save lives or would you not save lives? And I tend to really gravitate towards books like that. And I tend to really love a book that has a lot of questions about humanity and the interconnectedness of people. So yes, I really enjoyed this. I'm having trouble giving it a star rating though, because I'm not gonna lie to you, my gut says like a 3.5. And only because truly I feel like this is a book that needs to be reread to fully understand it. Or maybe I'm just stupid. Maybe I'm stupid and I just didn't get it, but I didn't fully get it. So it did take a little bit away from my enjoyment of this book. So I feel like I want to give it a 3.5 stars. Hello friends, I just got home from work. I've been editing a birthday unboxing right now. It actually just, oh my god. This is Gus. He just scared me. And while I was doing all of that, I was listening to Migrations and I realized that I was pretty far into it and I haven't really updated at all about my thoughts and feelings about this book. So it was interesting because the beginning of this book led me to believe that it was going to be something completely different than it is. And by the halfway point, there are a bunch of reveals that I was like not expecting. And I know that Jared had told me that this book was very different than what he even expected. And so I knew it wasn't going to be a straightforward like literary fiction of this woman kind of trying to find herself and following this migration of specific birds. It's definitely about climate change. It's in a not too distant future where the climate has ravaged different species. We're seeing mass extinctions. And as a matter of fact, our main character kind of weaseled her way onto this fishing ship. And what you're seeing is that these sailors who do this for a living, they're fishing the seas for a living, their jobs are becoming virtually obsolete because the fish species are dying out. And she kind of promises this boat of sailors or fishermen, and she basically promises these fishermen that if she can follow the migratory patterns of a specific bird, then they would be able to find like the jackpot of all jackpot of fish that they could fish and bring home and get a lot of money for. And she's a scientist, she specializes in birds. I know there's a specific name, they've said it in the book. I know I'm gonna butcher it, so I'm not even gonna try right now. But I'm really enjoying it. I was having trouble in the beginning getting into it because it was very slow. The writing itself is beautiful, but it's one of those like slow, meandering, just like beautiful works of fiction that I wasn't really in the mood for. But once we got going, you know, once I was like 20 or 30% in, I was like, okay, I'm interested in what's going to happen here. It's definitely taken a turn and it's very interesting. It's still very much that slow, meandering writing that's very beautiful, and I do think that you kind of have to be in the mood for that, but I'm really, really enjoying it. The atmosphere is so interesting because I've read quite a bit of climate fiction. I'm not gonna lie, this kind of makes me feel hopeless because the way they're describing the future, like, it's so relevant. It seems just so like this could happen tomorrow, and it makes you feel a bit hopeless. So that's sort of the atmosphere, and I mean, I feel like the character is kind of dealing with that too, where she also just feels kind of hopeless, and she's kind of a runner, like she runs away from things in her life. And so I think that's such a interesting and not unique per se, but almost it feels unique in a climate fiction. And I like a lot of the side characters in here because they're kind of being presented to you as if they are villainous, I guess, because even in the wake of this climate crisis, they're still trying to fish. They're still trying to make money off of this clearly unsustainable job. It's obviously ruining the environment, and in the wake of an environmental crisis, you are seeing a lot of people who are very much anti-hunters, poachers, fishermen. And so these characters are kind of presented to you as not necessarily bad guys, but obviously people who you're kind of questioning. You may not really like them. And I have found that she has humanized these characters so much rather than villainizing them. And I appreciate, I think, the conversation that's trying to be had here. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far.
Saw you paint a picture of a face that wasn't even close to mine. I know I shouldn't be in love, but it's so hard to move on. You haven't changed, you stayed the same. But if you did, I'd still love you anyway. I'd give you the world like I promised I would, even though you wouldn't do the same. I'd give you the world like I promised I would, even though you wouldn't do the same.
You know when you make yourself a little beverage in the morning and you're like, yep, this is gonna make my stomach hurt, but it's worth it. Okay, hello, I finished Migrations, and I feel like I can't really give you my full scope of thoughts on this without spoiling it, because there is a mystery in here and it starts to become a very prevalent part of the plot, like maybe 15-20% into the book. So that starts to become like the forefront of the book, and you're kind of guessing why this happened, why the character was hiding this, or is she hiding anything? And in the end, you know, you get your answers. This kind of goes between different timelines. And in the past chapters, the mystery that gets presented to us, like 15 or 20% into the book, starts to unravel through those chapters or through those flashbacks. And so the flashback portions start to become a little more vivid and a little more like giving us the truth of whatever the mystery is that I can't tell you. This book is so unexpected. I didn't really know what it was going to be going into it. Like, I just sort of thought it was going to be this climate fiction book, but I didn't even realize that this was set in a not so distant future, which, I mean, it may have said that on the flap. I didn't really read the flap because any of these books that Jared recommended, I just went ahead and read them. I didn't really look into the synopsis further than like whatever he was telling me. And really the only thing that he kept saying about this book was that it was an unexpected read. He didn't know that it it was going to go in the direction that it went, and I can definitely see what he was meaning. And I think had he not mentioned that, I would have felt exactly the same way. And I still had those feelings of like, oh, well, even though I knew something was coming, I didn't really expect it to be this. I'm not sure who to recommend this to. I think people who love literary fiction, but also like a little razzle dazzle, a little sprinkling of mystery in it, because that's definitely part of this story. I hesitate to like compare it to this, but I feel that it could be on the same level as like Celeste Ng, where her books are in theory like literary fiction, but there is a mystery element to them. And I'm only saying this as somebody who has read and DNF'd one of her books, so I could be completely wrong, and maybe they're all just like heavily mystery based, but I feel like they're more literary fiction than mystery. Also, this kind of bleeds into sci-fi, I guess, or futuristic, because it does have that not so distant future setting, and we're in a climate crisis, so it's not exactly set in our timeline. But I don't feel like that's sci-fi because it's literally happening. And honestly, if it weren't for those little moments of them talking about species going extinct and how bad the climate crisis was, it wouldn't have felt like a futuristic book. But I do think that this book is kind of bending the literary fiction genre a little bit, but this is coming from somebody who's completely ignorant to literary fiction, because I don't really pick it up that often, and I don't know really how to critique literary fiction because I don't read it often, so I don't know like what's typical of the genre, what the tropes are, except for the few things that I've read. Overall, I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 4 stars. It did take me a little while to get into this, but this makes sense to me. Jared really loves books like this. He loves that purple prose and the really like slow build to a sometimes sad or explosive or like satisfying ending, I guess. I genuinely think him recommending this to me was a combination of him thinking that I would enjoy the overall story and how it wraps up, but also the fact that I do like climate fiction. And I think he just wanted me to try this one out because he now calls Charlotte McConaughey one of his favorite authors. He's read both of her adult fiction books and has loved them. So obviously he would probably want me to try to read them, just like he wants me to read Maggie O'Farrell, which I did almost read in this vlog, but I was like, it's too much literary fiction. But yeah, I highly recommend this because I think that if you enjoy a literary fiction, even if it's not your like main genre, you will probably enjoy this. There's a lot to like about it, and there's a lot to like dissect in here, and it has that little razzle dazzle sprinkle of mystery, so that could be a really fun time. Hi, so California is in the middle of a hurricane, apparently. So, I don't know. There is lots of rain. We're definitely having a tropical storm, for sure. We had an earthquake just a few hours ago. So, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if I'll be going to work tomorrow. We will see. But I did start Rage of Dragons, and I am 225 pages. I'm on chapter 7. The chapters are very interesting in here because it's like a chapter, but then there are headings. So a chapter is like multiple headings. It's almost serving as like chapter 7 is just like part 7 rather than an actual chapter. But anyway, that doesn't have anything to do with the book. I am enjoying this a lot. I have actually read this chunk in one sitting. So it's safe to say that I'm really, really enjoying this. This is so fast paced. Right off the bat, like you get the epilogue, and in that epilogue, you kind of get the setup to this world in a way. Pretty much the reasoning behind it being so brutal, but like that setup is in the midst of this war or this skirmish happening, and so they are fighting, and you already are seeing people die, and then you go into the first chapter of the actual book following the characters that you're going to follow throughout the entirety of Rage of Dragons, and already action, action, action. It slows down for like a millisecond and then it picks back up. And so now I'm at the point in this book where you're at a military academy. And so obviously they're training, which if you know me, you know I love school settings, military academy settings, training type settings. And I feel like this is really giving me what I want from that because you see a lot of the training, you see a lot of the fighting. So if you don't like a lot of fighting and you don't like a lot of descriptions of fights, I don't know that I recommend this book. And while there hasn't been a whole lot of dragons yet, I have a feeling that dragons truly will be a big part of this book. And I know you're probably thinking like, it says Rage of Dragons, but there are so many books that have dragon in the title or even say pitch themselves as dragon books, and there's not a lot of dragons in them. I do feel like dragons are going to become a big part of this. So anyway, you can tell I really like it, but if you wanted like a small synopsis of what I can give you so far, this is following our main character Tao, and he lives in a world that has a caste system. So this caste system is very interesting because it's like you can kind of be on nobility level, but you're like a petty noble. So this shows you the caste system. I don't know if you're going to be able to read it too well, but this caste system from the top is like the queen and the royal family. There's royal nobles, the gifted. So the gifted are people who have basically magical abilities that they can hone in war. There's the Ingoyama, who are essentially high-ranking military. You have greater nobles, petty nobles, the Aihashi, which are also military service. You have high governor, high harvester, low harvester, high common, low common, and drudge. And a drudge is basically an indentured servant. So essentially this caste system is important because say a lesser tries to fight a noble, it can lead to them getting hanged. It can lead to them getting banished from wherever they live. And this was really important to the story because we meet Tao, and if I remember right, he is a high common, and he ends up in this situation where he wants to get revenge. And in the midst of everything happening that's leading to him wanting to get revenge, he ends up getting banished from his hometown, and they're kind of fighting for the fact that they maybe want to hang him. And so he decides that he's not gonna stand for any of it, and he goes to one of the military academies to try to get in. So basically to get into this academy, he has to win at least 10 times in combat, and Tao isn't necessarily trained in the same type of combat that many of these men that he's facing are. And it's so interesting because he's not necessarily good at fighting. Obviously he was never trained, but he's also not like naturally gifted at fighting, but he is so fueled by anger that it's incredible some of the fight scenes that he's gone through. I love it. I'm really eating this up. So I'm excited that this one seems like it'll be a 5 stars. And a couple of my friends I know, like Erin and I think Sid, they gave this 5 stars. I know many of my patrons, this is like one of their favorite books of all time. So I'm very excited. The only thing I'm not excited about is this is an unfinished series. Only 2 have come out, and I don't think the 3rd one, which is not the final one, won't come out until next year, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
I'd give you the world like I promised I would. Even though you wouldn't do the same. I'd give you the world like I promised I would. Even though you wouldn't do the same.
Hello, I don't even know if I've talked on here about the fact that we adopted another cat. You may have seen him in a few other clips, but I don't think I've addressed it. So we adopted another cat. His name is Goose. He actually adopted us. He was a stray cat living in our garage. Found out that he's like 7-8 months old and he was never chipped. I don't think he lives around here at all. We've asked around a little bit. No one knows who he is. He kind of just came out of nowhere and he was following us to our house. So we adopted him. We're still separating the girls, which if you didn't know, I have 2 female cats, Olive and Fitz. We've been separating them, but right now, right here is the hallway and the 2nd bedroom is there. And so we've been trying to feed them close to the door so that they get used to each other's scents, because we're hoping to introduce them soon. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it goes well. I'm really hoping because they are 7 years old. They're about to be 7 years old in October, and I'm nervous. Olive is actually doing really well today. She's very picky about food. No one cares about this. Okay, anyway, sorry. Moving on. What you do care about is I just finished Rage of Dragons on my break at work. So I finished it, I don't know, like a few hours ago, and it's all I can think about. It is by far 5 out of 5 stars. one of my favorite books of the year. The action scenes had me screaming. I was screaming at the action scenes. There is so many action scenes in this novel, but the ending quarter, maybe less than a quarter, I would say 15 to 20%. The last 15 to 20% of this book just go off. There are the most intense and detailed fight scenes of probably the entire book, and I was just screaming the whole time. I was in the break room like trying to be as quiet as possible, but I couldn't help it. It was just so intense. I know I gave kind of a description of this book in my last update, and it wasn't a very good description, but essentially this book is all about two people at war. So there are the Ohemi people, and they believe themselves to be the chosen people, but they had to leave their land because of this thing called the Coal, and they go to another area and they start a war with the native people of that area. But because they believe themselves to be the chosen one, they continue to be in a perpetual state of war because they will not give up on this idea that they are the chosen ones. And so therefore, everything is kind of theirs by right. And so, as I said before, there's a caste system, and we are following a main character named Tao. And due to some unforeseen and unfortunate events, it leads him to not enlisting, but fighting for a position in this military academy. He ends up getting into the military academy, and they have what they call skirmishes, and these skirmishes are between the lower and the noble caste. So essentially the lower caste group of soldiers have opportunities to fight their way up the ranks to where they can then, in theory, outrank noble people if they can fight their way to a certain ranking. And so Tao is basically trying to fight his way into this military academy, and the whole book is a lot about the conflict between these nobles and the lower caste, especially for Tao, and the unfortunate events that kind of lead him to this moment. It's a lot of him fighting to prove something, but also, you know, we are seeing some of the politics happening here. Obviously not fully because of who we're following. Since Tao is of the lower caste, we aren't really seeing, or we aren't really privy to a lot of the politics here, except for what he is seeing and privy to. But I really like following Tao, and I may have said this in my other update, but it's because he's not like a natural born fighter. Even though his father has military training and is pretty impressive in his abilities and skills to fight, Tao hasn't really picked up on that in the same way. At least he wasn't exactly like trained in the same way that it seems his father has been. And so when he gets to this point of trying to fight to get into this military academy, he is just so unprepared, but he is scrappy, and he just continues to fight no matter what, and he won't give up, and he's just holding on to certain things in his life that keep propelling him forward and keep fueling the fire for him. And I love a story of vengeance. I also love military academies, but I also really loved the fact that even though there are a ton of fight scenes in here, and I would say this is like 90% we're fighting, we're at war, we're practicing to fight for this war, and there's very little opportunity to really spend time with the characters, you do end up falling in love with these characters a little bit. Like, you love Tao because of his tenacity, and you like the friends that he's making along the way, because even when they have their conflict, you realize that they truly have made a very strong connection. But the other reason I really like this book and following Tao in particular is because obviously we're seeing a lot of fighting, but the way that it's written is so interesting. Like, things go from one perspective to another, and not in a super jarring way that can take you out of the story or take you out of the fight scene. If anything, it drew me further into it, because we would get a chapter of this fight scene from a perspective, and then when something in the fight is shifting, whether it is for good or for bad for the other opponent, we will often like switch the angle and we will see it from the opponent's point of view. And it's not like seeing the same fight scene from everybody's point of view. It's literally like we will be in the middle of a fight scene and then something happens and we'll switch the point of view and continue on with that fight scene from a different POV. I loved it in here. The way that it was written, the way we were following the fight scenes, I was so invested. And I'm not necessarily somebody who enjoys a ton of fight scenes, but for whatever reason, I was in it. Every time we were getting those POV switches, I was just so invested. And I also think some of the magic system in here makes the fighting really cool to learn about and to see unfold. So this is by far one of my favorite books of the year. It is 5 out of 5 stars. But this one in particular, he has been telling me for years, probably for 2 years since he read it, that I need to read it. And now I completely understand. And I'm so glad, because I haven't had many 5-star favorite books this year, and this is such a good feeling. Every time I wear this yellow shirt on camera, I'm like, yeah, this is extremely unflattering, but I keep wearing it because it's so cozy. Okay, so we have reached the end of the Jared vlog. Obviously, I didn't have him in the video a lot because he is extremely camera shy, but we got him that one clip, so we're thriving. I wanted to come here and close out the vlog, but I also wanted to give you my ranking of the books. I don't have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow up here, it's downstairs, but I'll tell you where it fits into the stack. So this would be my ranking, and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow would literally be between The House on Needlessry and Migrations, which honestly, this is kind of what I predicted, although I did think that Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow was more likely to be in second place than third. I'm excited to have done this vlog because it just confirms that I feel like I know Jared's taste, and I kind of know where it'll fall in my enjoyment of it. Although Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow was one that really surprised me. As you saw, I had a lot of ups and downs with that book, but ended up loving it overall. Maybe not on the same level as him, but again, he's a literary fiction girl. But I had so much fun doing this. It was a long time coming to finally get to the end of this vlog, but we made it. So if you have made it this far, please leave a dragon emoji down below, and I will talk to you next time. Bye, friends.